Books. Obviously, I enjoy books. I enjoy reading books. But one of the things I enjoy most is collecting the books and having a physical form of the books, like a physical copy of the books. I just think it's wonderful to have those physical copies. And, I mean, let's be honest here. Who doesn't enjoy a good book? And that, that good, like, book smell, I'm sure most of you know what I'm talking about. But, like, books just have a certain smell that I don't think could ever be replaced or replicated. So yeah, Sylvia Plath's work. As I said, I went into a pretty deep sleep for a while. And so catching up on different works of literature has been one of my many duties as a being of writing and literature. And I think one of my favorite pieces of works to catch up on has been Sylvia Plath's work. It's so interesting, and she captures something that I think every being in existence at least experiences a handful of times in her life. And I just think that's so fascinating to see and read and watch as these writers, such as Sylvia, capture this emotion that many would say is human, but I would argue is fundamentally just an emotion of living. And then we switch gears very suddenly, as I normally do. I love horror. Give me a good horror game, horror story, horror movie, like any day of the week. I have always loved the genre. Like, when it was created, I was very skeptical at first when I first saw it start to pop out of the ashes of things such as Gothic literature and that. And I was like, I don't know how to feel about this, but like seeing where it's come from and seeing its growth and like catching up on stuff that I've missed recently in the last 300 years is such an amazing thing to see that and know that it started from such a different place and now it's here, and it's very much a fascinating thing to see and witness, and I just enjoy it so much. And then this one, potato soup. I really, really love potato soup. It's one of my favorite things. It's just so good when it's like cooked perfectly and seasoned correctly, and like the potatoes are like the right firmness, like not too soft but not too hard, then it's just so good. And it blows me away of how humans can look at these things such as potatoes or plants and think, yeah, we can use these in cooking. It's just like, even watching that as it happened, as humans took things and started cooking with them, is such a fascinating thing. And, having lived a very, very long life, I can't exactly place when I first saw it, and I don't remember what I first saw. But I do know the feeling of awe looking at these beings who, in almost every way, I guess at that point I thought were not necessarily inferior, but I wasn't sure why they were there or why they existed. And then watching them come up with all these inventions and grow and evolve into what we have now And it's such, I guess, an inspiring thing to see. Okay, now on to dislikes. I dislike white chocolate. You know, there's a lot of things that humans have created that I would argue I enjoy. White chocolate? It's not one of those things. I don't know why humans came up with it. I don't want to know why. And, you know, I'm fine pretending that it doesn't exist because really, why did we think this was a good idea? It was like my question. You know, who looked at chocolate and said it should be white and like taste worse than it does when we like overly sweetened it? Recently I've been, since I am currently near or around Americans for the most part, their chocolate is weak. Like, it could be better. Moving on. Unpopular, I feel, because I've seen a lot since waking back up, about George R.R. Martin, and everyone's like, oh, it's so great, and I, like, tried to read the Game of Thrones, and, like, you know, obviously I know what happens in the Game of Thrones, because, again, being of literature, but I just don't understand the appeal of it, I guess. If you like Game of Thrones, great. I'm so happy for you. But I personally am going to avoid it and also avoid George R.R. Martin. I've also read recently that he criticized writers of these things that humans call fandoms, who write stories based off of these medias that they've read. And I think that's a wonderful way to, what am I trying to say? To not upgrade your ability, but just, I guess maybe I am trying to say upgrade your ability to practice your ability of writing. I'm not saying you should always do that, but like, I understand why some would find it easier to practice their writing ability by writing a fan fiction, as you call them, which is quite an inventive name, than to write your own fiction. It's difficult work to write. And if they love the media that much that they want to create something out of it and with the characters that you've created, then I don't think you should be insulting them for that. And he does. Kind of, all the time. And I think that is not only a terrible thing to do, but also it's just quite despicable of the writer himself. Because as I said, I know what happens in Game of Thrones. I did attempt to read it because I wanted to catch up on the popular literature of your time, and I'm gonna have to be honest, he didn't give them a lot of good material to go off of. But that's neither here nor there. If you enjoy it, I'll let you enjoy it, but that is my opinion on it. I dislike Apex Legends. this is more just I'm not great at it. Maybe it's because my system that I'm working on right now is kind of not great. And if that's the reason, that makes sense, and I can accept that reason. But also, the only times I've ever managed to get even close to winning, I got in 3rd place a handful of times, which is great, amazing, good job, Marcella. You're doing amazing. But it's literally because I couldn't find anyone to fight. Like, I was running around in the game and I was like, oh, I'll do this thing, and I just did not understand how it worked. And then I got to 3rd because I survived for a whole 17 minutes. Because I just didn't run into anyone. And it's kind of the same thing with Valorant for me. Although there's a bit more to that one. Personally, that just makes me not really have any opinion of it. People overtaking my space. I live in a house with, let's see, art, music, about 4 other spirits of creation, beings of creation. We always call ourselves spirits of creation, and I think that's interesting. But anywho, and some of them are a bit more, spread out than others, which winds up in some of us losing our space. And my space as a writer is, in a way, sacred to me. And I would really rather not have people overtaking my space. Not to mention the fact that the being of creation can oftentimes be a bit clingy. I love them dearly. I really do. We're all like a bunch of siblings, excluding Art. But they can really get on someone's nerve who is, as humans would call it, an introvert. So that's how it is. I also don't like parties. Again, as I've said in the last one, I'm an introvert and don't like people overtaking my space, and parties are kind of all about that. Also, as a being of creation and somewhat a god, I'm not fond of alcohol. Humans have come up with some very inventive things, and, alcohol is one of those things. But it's just not for me. I'll stick to my ambrosia and go from there. I just like insects. I've never been particularly fond of them, which is unfortunate. Living back 4 million years, when there weren't really houses, and my fellow beings of creation were also, still figuring out what their place in the world was, as I was, and we had no clue how to create planes of existence for ourselves to live in. Anywho, I one time had a bad run-in with a giant spider, and I've never liked insects since. But that's a story for another time. I just like most historical inaccuracies. Not because I wouldn't like history to be better, as I'm sure we all would like history to normally do better.